Hello and welcome back to the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here on Monday, August 17th with the Toronto Blue Jays coming off a series victory over the New York Yankees. I'm your host, Zach Worden, joined as always by Jori Negin-Shecter. And today we are super pleased to be joined by returning guest Thomas Hall of Blue Jays Nation and the Blue Jays World Update podcast. Thomas, thanks so much for taking the time to do this today, and we're looking forward to chatting a little bit of Jays here as they are firmly back in the conversation.
Yeah, it's crazy how they have suddenly found a way to get back in this race here. I mean, it helps when a lot of the teams around you are losing at the time when you're hot. So, give the Blue Jays credit. I think they're tied for the third best record in baseball since July 27th. So they have found a way here to gain some momentum post trade deadline. And, there's no better way to build momentum when you're coming off series wins over the Red Sox and the Yankees, especially heading down to the Trop, which, we all know for the Jays has pretty much been a house of horrors for the last number of years.
Yeah, so as we sit here, they are officially one game out of the wild card spot. We did see them kind of climb into that position. I believe it was after Saturday's win, they kind of climbed in there. And then obviously, with everything all mixed up, tough to stay there when you even lose one game. But what have you kind of made of this Blue Jays team post deadline with their kind of, you do the whole buy sell thing, but for them to kind of turn things around here with some of these young guys stepping in and just kind of a different feel, I would say.
Yeah, I would say like they have found a way to catch their second wind in a way where, you bring in Brett Bateman, Charles McAdoo, you bring him back up from AAA Buffalo, and those guys have kind of just changed the complete vibe around the clubhouse. Like you used to come into the Blue Jays clubhouse before every game, and it'd be pretty much a ghost town, and it would be very quiet. Like you wouldn't really see guys playing card games like you used to, say, last year, where it'd be pretty much, Groundhog's Day, where it doesn't matter who they were playing, what day you would come in, like guys would be going about their same routines. There'd be a number of guys playing cards at one of the tables in the middle of the clubhouse. And with how bad things were this year, it kind of just like they lost that sense of identity in themselves. And, I think when you come out of the trade deadline and, you see that it wasn't a full sell off. It wasn't a full tear down. That guys are just able to exhale. Guys like George Springer, Max Scherzer, Shane Bieber, even Miles Straw, who plays such an important role for this team, both on and off the field. They're just able to play so much freer. And, I think that does mean something, even though you can't necessarily quantify it. Like there's no necessary metric that you can associate with guys playing with less pressure and more relaxed. And I think that's sort of what we're seeing with this team, where they're just showing up to the ballpark and they're looking to have fun again. Like I know, talking with Ernie Clement, Dalton Varsho leading up to the trade deadline, that was one thing both of them pointed out and stated that internally they needed to get back to playing fun baseball again, because when you're losing, it's not all that much fun coming to the ballpark every day. And so, I think overall, it's an imperfect system, right? Like the way the Blue Jays are playing, it's not necessarily sustainable, but at the same time, at this point in the season, sustainability isn't really like something that you need to hang your hat on right now. Like it's just all about winning as many games as you can, like firing all those bullets that you can, whether it's using a reliever 3 days in a row or, perfectly executing a bullpen day against a Yankees in a day where you're going up against Cam Slittler, which, going into on paper, you're saying, okay, that's probably going to be a scheduled loss for the Blue Jays. And somehow they come out with a win on that day. Like it doesn't necessarily matter how they're getting it done, but it just matters that they're piling up wins and they're doing it at a time where, the rest of these like teams in this muddy middle competing for that wild card spot, that final wild card spot, they're all kind of like sputtering and losing at the same time that the Blue Jays are kind of finding their second wind here.
Yeah, there was that great quote from, I guess it would have been the Red Sox series from John Schneider, basically saying it's got to be full send. And to this point, it seems like it has been that. And as a result, they've been able to string together a couple of wins here, a couple series wins. I guess for you, On the field, because you're saying off the field, there's been a definite vibe shift, but on the field, what do you think the biggest driver behind this change really has been?
I would say the pitching staff, right? Because you look at the offense, and in the month of August, they're still towards the bottom in home runs, OPS, runs scored. Like, it's funny. You look at the Blue Jays and the Mariners, and both those teams are kind of just battling out to see who's going to finish the year ranked 30th in runs scored per game. So, but it's definitely been adding Jose Soriano to this rotation and swapping Kevin Gausman's production out for Soriano. And, through three starts here, like, it's been a huge improvement for the rotation. And, the way Dylan Cease has been able to take this jump and go toe to toe, start for start with Cam Slittler here for the AL Cy Young race, like those two guys are the horses for this rotation. And, even you have Max Scherzer pitching the way he has been over his last 3, 4 starts. Like that to me has been one of the more bigger surprises of this recent stretch. Like there was a time, even a month ago where I thought, okay, like the wheels have fallen off here for Max. Like this isn't going to go, this isn't going to end well for him, right? Like I thought we were heading towards a situation where he was going to have a similar type of press conference that Justin Verlander did around the All-Star break, saying that this was going to be it for me. I wanted to play till the wheels fall off. Well, the wheels are falling off, and I don't think we're going to get that type of response from Max anytime soon, knowing the competitor that he is, and especially the way he's been pitching lately, where the velo has ticked up again, the stuff has come back, the pitch shapes have ticked back up here, and he's healthy for right now. Right. And that's the biggest asterisk because we all know that can change on a whim that, whether it's the thumb or the back or the forearm or whatever, things can change quickly with Max here, but for right now, you are fully maximizing this lightning in a bottle stretch that you're getting from him, and even Shane Bieber too. Like the underlying stuff and metrics aren't all that favorable to him. He's allowing a fair bit of walks, getting hit hard, but he's finding a way to pitch through that. And the Blue Jays defense has definitely helped their pitching staff out a lot too. Like the addition of Brett Bateman, whether it's in center or right or left field, that's been a, not a huge improvement, I'd say, over Dalton Varsho, but I think like marginally he has moved the needle forward for this team, just given that, metrically the defense of Dalton Varsho had declined this year, both in terms of the range, the arm strength, the sprint speed. So, they've gotten a guy to come up and somebody who's hungry. Like I talked to Brett Bateman on Friday before the game, and this is a guy who's just coming up and just hungry to compete. Like he obviously wasn't here for the bad times to experience what the lows of lows were for the Blue Jays. He's just coming up and is grateful the opportunity to be thrust not only into what's been, pretty much an everyday major league opportunity, but a position where, he's going from being blocked in the Cubs system by Pete Crow Armstrong to now being on a Blue Jays squad that's in the mix for the final wild card spot. So, having him up here, having Vlad's defense as well at first, like I think Vlad, like as bad as his offense has been, and I know like today's the anniversary of his last regular season home run at Rogers Center, so it's not a great time to be talking about his offense, but you know quietly this has been arguably his best defensive performance. And I think by, November, we're going to be talking about Vlad earning his second career Gold Glove. And, we saw another incredible play from Vladdy. Actually, we saw a few of them on this last homestand, but we saw it most recently, what was it, Tuesday or Thursday? I think it was Thursday, where he made that over the shoulder catch and ended up diving into the stands, caught by the netting. So, I think pitching and defense are definitely the biggest strengths of this Blue Jays team right now, which isn't a surprise. That's kind of how it's been all year. But those facets are really, you can really feel the impact, both like whether it's on the scoreboard, in the standings, just on the field. Like it's impacting this team in so many different ways right now.
Yeah, it's so interesting to watch because obviously, like, this is kind of the formula that they've set out to try and win games, right? The pitching defense get just enough offense to kind of squeak by and win games. And, I'm sure that they'd love to have a little bit more offense to be able to not be playing 1 and 2 run games every night. But, that's kind of where things are right now. You mentioned Cease and Schlittler and kind of the Cy Young race that they've got going on, and obviously, this series, and then when they're at Yankee Stadium here in this week, we'll continue to kind of get this firsthand look at the race. I kind of wonder for you, coming out of this weekend where Cease goes, 10 Ks, 6 1/3, gives up a couple runs. Schlittler goes 5 1/3, 7 Ks, kind of battle some traffic most of the night. I mean, where are you at with where the Cy Young race is, and how kind of excited are you to follow that the rest of the way here?
Oh yeah, it's gonna be an exciting race to the finish line because I don't think there's a clear-cut leader right now. Like maybe Slitler just because of like the New York bias amongst the national voters in the states. So maybe he has a slight edge still, but I would say it's neck and neck right now. Like you look at the all the metrics there, like they're right up with each other. Whether it's innings pitched, even though Dylan Cease has made three fewer starts than Slitler, strikeouts, ERA, expected ERA, FIP, WAR, even the number of times each of them have pitched 6 innings or more. Like they're kind of matching exactly where both of them are. So I think these final 6 weeks are going to dictate who ends up winning that race, which is going to make things all that more entertaining. The fact that the Blue Jays still have a series remaining against the Yankees next week or later this week. So, I would say like because you have the American audience, like I would say the Yankees pitcher is always going to have a slight edge over a Blue Jays pitcher. Like I remember last month talking to Dave Steve about this and him saying how much that when he was pitching, how the narrative was Blue Jays pitchers, you're not even being nominated. Like you're not even in consideration. Like that's how bad it was back then. And obviously now with all the different landscapes of media coverage that we have now in 2026, like you can't get by on that. Like you're not hiding Dylan Cease away in a corner where nobody can watch what he's doing. So, I think this is great for baseball, obviously, to have two pitchers in two big markets going toe to toe for the American League Cy Young. But in terms of determining who's going to come away with this, I would say it might come down to like whether or not Cease is needed to pitch in that final series against the Reds to get the Blue Jays into the wild card spot, or is it Cam Slitler who locks it up a week or two beforehand just because the Yankees are, clinching that first wild card spot or something like that. Like I think it'll come down to one of the last few starts that each of these guys make, bearing an injury, because of course that can always change this race. But I think it's going to come down right to the end.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, right, it's going to be a photo finish. And Cease, for his part, is probably having, I mean, I would argue a top probably five pitching seasons of the 21st century for the Blue Jays. Obviously, there's a couple Doc seasons mixed in there, and Gosman getting a couple nods as well. But I mean, just earlier, the Jays mentioning on their Twitter, on their socials, the fastest Blue Jay in team history to 200 strikeouts. This has been just nothing short of a revelation. And obviously, Cease had some of this historically in terms of doing this in the past. But I mean, he's certainly elevated himself into like an upper echelon here of pitchers in all of baseball at this point.
Yeah, he has. He has become exactly what he himself and the Blue Jays set out to accomplish before the start of this season. Like, this is what the Blue Jays pitched Dylan Cease on back in November. Like, they set out a plan and a template to say, okay, this is how we are going to take you to the next level and help you become a year in, year out Cy Young caliber pitcher. And that's what we're seeing play out in front of our eyes here. Like, it's not even just what they've done for him with his pitch mix and helping him become more than just a two pitch pitcher with the fastball slider. It's, everything from like the tempo that he has on the mound, the pitch mechanics, like down to like how long he peaks at third base before he comes down the mound to home plate. Like the Blue Jays have unlocked his full potential better than any other team has been able to do, whether it's the White Sox, or the Padres, or even the Cubs back in the day. It's been remarkable to see Cease elevate his game to the next level here. And he even talked about it to reporters after his most recent start, where this has been his biggest development jump this year. And, when you have 6 more years of this to come too, it really makes things exciting about where this Blue Jays rotation is heading. Like, yeah, you're entering a new era from Kevin Gausman being your ace to now Dylan Cease filling that role. And when you have somebody like Jose Soriano, who potentially could take that similar type of leap that Dylan Cease is making this year, and the fact that you have 6 weeks left to really experiment things with Jose Soriano to be able to get him at his peak level at the start of 2027, if we have a 2027 season, it's a huge opportunity for the Blue Jays. And the fact that you also can have a healthy Trey Savage hopefully in 2027 to round out that trio, along with maybe Jake Bloss or somebody else in the system, whether it's a development story or it's acquiring a 4th and a 5th starter in free agency, maybe bringing Kevin Gausman back, we'll see. But it's become a really strong foundation for the Blue Jays to build around moving forward.
This episode of the Bird's Eye View podcast is brought to you by BioSteel. Use code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order at biosteel.ca. Again, that's code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order. For all your high performance hydration needs, visit biosteel.ca. Thank you again to BioSteel for sponsoring today's episode.
So for a podcast who has had many Ricky Tiedemann conversations over the past couple of years, the fact that it took us, I guess 20 or 30 minutes here to kind of touch on Ricky Tiedemann's debut, I guess is maybe a statement on where things are at with Ricky Tiedemann's career. But for his journey to land here and be this guy who comes up for one day, obviously, the stuff looks great, and they're kind of doing the thing where you say you gotta get to the majors eventually. We don't got to see the results in AAA where you just, if you're healthy, we're gonna give you the shot. How cool is it to see Ricky Tiedemann's journey finally arrive in the major leagues, and what do you kind of expect for him if he does make it back up to the majors here again later this season?
Fantastic story. Like, he has put in so much work behind the scenes to get to this point, and us not even knowing what has been dealing with off the field with his
Yeah.
mom too. Like, that's the stuff that plays on your heartstrings, right? To hear that this is a guy who essentially has been building to this moment for the last 2-3 years, and has you know been pushed down to the bottom of the mountain so many different times due to injuries. And to see him come up to the major leagues, and like, the results are what they are. Like, nobody really cares for a guy who's been working so hard as he has to get to this moment. It's just the fact that he was able to get into a game even as a reliever, right?
Yeah.
That's a huge accomplishment. Like, that's something he's going to remember for the rest of his life. So I'm you know really happy he was able to have that moment for himself. And it's just the business of baseball that the next day he gets optioned down, just because he was going to be down for a couple days, just because
Yeah.
that's how the Blue Jays have been handling him, coming off all the injuries, and him now being essentially a 1 inning reliever. But I think long term, like, if he can stay healthy, and that's always the biggest asterisk with Tiedemann, unfortunately. But I think if he can, then there's a spot in this bullpen for him to be, a medium to high leverage guy who has nasty stuff from the left side coming out in the bullpen. Like, we all saw how much of a roller coaster ride it can be with Brennan Little in that sort of role. And I think if the Blue Jays stay in this thing, which seems like they are going to for the rest of the way, I think Ricky Tiedemann long term could be that second lefty in the bullpen who has an opportunity to pitch in higher leverage situations if, the likes of Spencer Miles, Tyler Rogers, Mason Fluharty, Brendan Fisher, when on those days when those guys aren't available, that's an opportunity for Ricky to come up and pitch in those high leverage spots and give the Blue Jays some value and a little bit more certainty compared to the likes of Brendan Little or Matt Waldron or Chase Lee. Um, other like outside of those, bubble guys, I would like to see Ricky Tiedemann come up and pitch in, those types of situations. But it's also complicated because chances are after he makes an appearance, he's going to be down for a couple of days. So, you know, I think the rest of the way here, it might be a situation where he's an up and down guy, where maybe he's up for a week or two and then goes back down because, just because you're trying to maximize options. So I don't think this is the last we've seen of him in 2026 in the Jays bullpen. And, I think come playoff time, if the Blue Jays are fortunate enough to get that final wild card seed, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up on that playoff roster.
Yeah, definitely will not be the last that we see of Ricky Tiedemann, I'd imagine, this year. I want to kind of get your take on his debut. He did pick up a couple strikeouts, went just over an inning, and I mean, looked the part, it seemed like, of a big leaguer. Like this was a guy that did not seem phased at all facing the New York Yankees. Obviously, there was that funny moment of him kind of walking off the field before Schneider comes to get him. Oops, I my job here is done, but I guess I gotta let you tell me that. But what did you make of his start, or rather his first appearance?
Yeah, I thought the stuff looked great. Like 96, 97 with the fastball, the wipeout slider. Like it was exactly what you expect to see of Ricky Tiedemann in that type of role where, he can just max out his stuff in one inning rather than having to save some gas in the tank for that second, third time through the order. So yeah, I think that's kind of the stuff we would expect to see moving forward from Tiedemann once he comes back up and has an opportunity to pitch in the bullpen. But I think yeah, like overall the debut was pretty decent. Like he did give up a couple of hits, give up that run, but overall, what like you said, like coming into that spot where you're facing the New York Yankees in a big spot, low scoring game, like didn't look phased by it at all. Like it I wasn't there to talk to him pregame, but it seems like he's the type of guy who has the composure to not be, anxious or have any sort of nerves in those situations. Or if he does, he's certainly not showing it on the mound. So I think it's exactly the type of guy that you want pitching in those situations.
Okay, Thomas, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit here. This is a conversation that I've had with many people like off to the side, but if you were to rank, say, the top five left-handed relievers in the Blue Jays organization as of today, Monday, August 17th, where do you kind of think that Ricky Tiedemann fits into that? Not considering health, not considering, role or any of these other factors, but just kind of like on a pure talent standpoint, where would you slot him in there?
I would probably say number two or number three. Like I think Mason Fluharty's by far number one. But I think like it's a toss up between him and Brendan Little because I think when Little has his command on, like the stuff is undeniable. Like I've always been a firm believer of that, like especially now that he's incorporated the four seamer and the slider, like that has allowed him to be in the strike zone a little bit more, not a ton, but a little bit more. So I think in those moments when Little has his command, then maybe he's a step ahead of Ricky Tiedemann just because he has more experience, a little bit more of a arsenal than Tiedemann does. But you know that and this is part of like the conversation that the Blue Jays are already starting to have internally, if they allow themselves to think about their playoff roster, is who are the best 13 pitchers that we have in our system, and right now Ricky Tiedemann's one of them.
Yeah. You got a take for who would be number four there?
You're looking for a
Oh.
Javen Coleman shout out, aren't
No,
you?
well, so I mean, obviously,
Oh,
obviously, I'm a Javen Coleman truther, but the AAA ball has not been
yeah.
kind to him so far.
No, I think the shine. has unfortunately been a little bit lost on him. Like I was really high on him coming into the year, hoping that he was going to have a breakout season, and like it sort of started out that way. But you know, like you said, when you go up to AAA ball and not necessarily have the type of results that he's had, like yeah, and even like the stuff, like it's certainly declined at the AAA level too. So I don't know if he's in like the top 5 right now. Like I know like Joe Mantiply when he's healthy, I would say he's probably around that mix too, but he's also coming off
So,
of surgery. So
can you believe that
yeah,
Paul
I like it.
Sewald and Joe Mantiply are both on the Blue Jays right
It's
now?
crazy. What year is this? Is this
Uh,
2023?
The
yeah,
time,
something
Like
about those D-backs, eh?
yeah.
yeah, like I remember writing about articles like 3 years ago saying, yeah, Paul Sewald, Joe Mantiply, those are two guys the Blue Jays should be targeting for their trade deadline bullpen wish list. So yeah, it's crazy that like how things can play out the way they have, and you know, it's like to steal a line from Keegs, like you never know where the season's gonna take you, right? So like here we are in August. The Blue Jays are back in the mix for a playoff spot, and you have Paul Sewald pitching in high leverage situations in your bullpen. Less than a week after being DFA'd from the Diamondbacks, Joe Mantiply is rehabbing in the system. Like it's wild, man. Like it's the bullpen churn in Major League Baseball is so unpredictable. So like I guess part of us shouldn't be surprised that the Jays, given the injuries that they've had and the holes they've needed to fill in their bullpen, have gone not dumpster diving but waiver diving in a sense. Like and like honestly, I think there is some upside with Seawald too. Like the Blue Jays are looking for more situations where they can have better landing spots for Seawald, have him face more righties than lefties, because lefties have pummeled him this year. And I think one of the bigger issues that he faced as the D-backs closer is facing a lot of lefties, because there was only one in the D-backs bullpen outside of, or not even, I think there was only one lefty reliever in the Diamondbacks bullpen all year. So he unfortunately had to face a lot of lefties in those save situations, and things didn't necessarily work out in his favor that way. But you know, if they can get the fastball to tick up a little bit more, get that velo up, um, be able to maximize like that low arm slot that he has, and get a little bit more ride on that heater too, to be a little bit more deceiving, then maybe there might be something there. But yeah, it's pretty wild that you have Seawald and Mantiply both in the organization at the same time. Like it's crazy where things can take you.
We've bounced around quite a little bit here in terms of the pitching of the Blue Jays, but I want to take it back to game 1 of the series. Just pulling up Shane Bieber's line: 6 innings, 4 hits, one earned run, one walk, 5 Ks. Uh, like a productive outing en route to the Jays winning the opener of the series. And again, we've kind of bounced around a little bit here, but uh, do you think that Shane Bieber is a guy that can build off of this? Because it's obviously there's been so much up and down with him in terms of how his season has gone, but especially now without you Savage, the Jays are going to be leaning on Bieber to be an important part of this rotation down the stretch if they hope to ultimately make a push for one of these wildcard spots, right? And this was the start, it seemed like, hopefully, of something better to come, because again, the results have very much been mixed for Bieber. But do you think this can be a jumping off point for him?
I don't know. Like I'm really concerned just looking under the hood with Shane. Like the walks, the hard contact that he's given up. Like I'm waiting for one of these, or another one of these blow ups from him. Maybe not the 6 walks in the first inning that he had against Washington, but like if we get to a situation where the Jays are game 3 of a playoff wild card matchup and Shane Bieber's getting the ball, like to me, I would look at that as a bullpen game. Like I'd be ready to fire all my bullets, because I don't have a ton of trust in where Shane is right now. Like at the end of the day, he's a pitcher, so he's somebody that knows how to get by without his best stuff. Like he's able to, pitch to contact and get those ground balls, even if they've been hit hard, and rely on his defense. And for a lot of this recent stretch, they bailed him out. But um, it's like there's the motivation for Shane both pitching in a stretch run where the Jays have an opportunity to make the playoffs, and the fact that he's got free agency coming up. So, I wouldn't be surprised if he has a competitive end of the season. But if I were an evaluating GM, I would have a lot of concerns, and there'd be a lot of red flags for me about whether or not I'd want to bring Shane in, and what type of deal I'd want to bring him in on. But for right now, like, he's one of the best starters the Blue Jays have at this point. So they're gonna have to try and work things out with him and get the best they can out of him. But I think it's very touch and go, and I think right now it's still a work in progress.
Yeah, I think you look at it since he kind of like turned the corner, quote unquote, turned the corner, say in that Padres start, but before the All-Star break. I mean, the ERA is respectable enough where it's like a 3.53, but
Yeah.
as you mentioned, a 5.05 xERA, 4.4 FIP, strikeout rate below 20%, walk rate above 10%. So we'll kind of see how that all continues to play out. I did want to give you one more on the bullpen mix, kind of as we're talking about Ricky Tiedemann and some of these other guys in there. The Blue Jays recently at Double A have started having Gage Stanifer and Daniel Guerra
Mm.
pitch out of the bullpen. To you, is that a load management thing? Is that a we want to have them as a potential option for down the stretch, or a little bit of both?
Yeah, I think it might be a little bit of both. Like, especially with somebody like Stanifer, I think he's probably destined for that like hybrid bulk role anyway. Once he gets to the AAA level and above, like it hasn't worked out as a starter. Like the command hasn't been there. And obviously you don't want a lot of walks from from a reliever either. But at the same time, I think that gives you the best shot to maximize his arsenal, and shorten, like, try and find better windows for him to face too. So I think, I wouldn't be surprised, especially now that we've seen Ricky Tiedemann come up. Like, anything is on the table for the Blue Jays. Like, you look at Trey Savage's development and pathway last year, like that has completely changed every conversation in this regard when it comes to promoting guys up the system. So I think it comes down to whether or not the Blue Jays feel like either of those guys can help them have an impact this year, and determine whether or not those are two of the better arms that they have in the system. So yeah, I think come September when rosters are expanded, that might be more of a conversation that they start kicking around. And I think, yeah, this is an opportunity for both of them to prove that they could come up here, whether it's in a 1 inning role or a 2 or 3 inning role, and provide an impact. Because I think, like, when you look at this rotation, like, Spencer Arrighetti, like, there's not a ton of certainty with his health right now, right? And his rehab start yesterday, he only went 3 innings. So I think he's somebody that is probably going to need another rehab outing. I would think at least one more. And I don't even know what the update is in terms of what the Blue Jays figured out in terms of what his treatment is on the foot nerve issue that he has. And so I think, because they're without a fifth starter, like, as much as they have been successful in these executing these bullpen days, there's only going to be so many times that you can run out Simeon Woods Richardson in that bulk role. And so I think that would be the opportunity for those guys to come up and maybe get a look, give the Blue Jays a fresh arm in the pen. And I think as well, like, Matt Waldron's probably his days aren't exactly going to be long, I think, with the Blue Jays either. Like, he's probably going to be the first guy out of this mix, if they were looking for more length in the pen, or to give them a second option outside of Woods Richardson for those quote unquote bullpen days. So I think it's possible either of them come up, but I think the Blue Jays are going to judge this based on results more than anything else.
Yeah, the Woods Richardson Blue Jays tenure has been fascinating so far with the 9 walks in 15 innings and the 8 hits allowed, and the only run he's allowed was the weirdness of the Red Sox play. So
Yep.
so crazy there. But Thomas, I did want to ask you as well. Obviously, important storyline from this weekend in the series against the Yankees is, of course, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. hitting the concussion IL after the Yankees throw the ball around and George Lombard New Jr. basically knees him in the head.
Should have been a 5-minute major, honestly.
Something in WWE.
Yeah.
For Vlad, I mean, obviously, it's a big loss for this Blue Jays team, but for a guy who, has so desperately just needed like some positive momentum offensively, how much does this, put a pause on that? Is this something that maybe, is kind of the break that he is needed? Like kind of where do you kind of think that this concussion IL stint will stand for him?
Yeah, like I would say, the break that he had with the back, like that clearly was beneficial. Like Vladdy coming back and looking really good at the plate and having some of his best at bats of the season. So I think it's possible that we have a similar type of outcome here, but it's always different when obviously when you're dealing with a concussion or concussion like symptoms. So it was good to see Vladdy in the dugout with the guys and feeling good enough to at least be outside. Because with stuff like that, like you might have to go into a dark room. Like you can't even be outside to look at the sun because it gives you a headache or a migraine. So certainly encouraging to see that Vladdy's making that type of progress, and hopefully it's just a minimum stint here. Because even though the numbers aren't where they are, where anyone wants them to be, like he just brings that presence to the middle of the order that changes a lot of things for the Blue Jays. And I think for himself personally, like it's different when, of course, when you have a back injury versus a concussion because you can't do anything while you're taking time off here. So I would assume, knowing how giddy and itchy Vladdy is, like he's probably dying to go out and get in the cages, take some swings. So like I wouldn't be as optimistic to say that Vladdy's going to break out coming out of this IL stint, but um, maybe at this point of the year, like it's good for him to get off his feet and be a little bit fresher. But we also know how much Vladdy prides himself on posting, and he's already missed the most games this season that he has in his career. So like he's definitely well aware of that. And so I would say on the other side of that coin, him coming out of this stretch, he's probably going to have a lot of pressure on himself internally to come out and produce right away, especially when you're facing the Yankee or the Rays right now. And if it is a minimum stint, he'd be back for the Yankee series. So I, it's hard to say whether or not this IL stint will do him any good, but hopefully, if nothing else, it's the last time we have to see Vladdy take an extended absence like this the rest of the year.
I mean, if nothing else, if he does ultimately end up with a minimum stint, coming back to Yankee Stadium for him, I'm sure will be very much welcome. I mean, the one thing too is that despite obviously losing Vladdy, and you can say what you will about his offensive production this year, they've actually done okay in terms of replacing it, thanks in large part, I think, to Alejandro Kirk, who looks like, I mean, himself again. I think this is a guy that's got an average up over 300, probably over the past 2 weeks. Has really looked like the Jays' most dangerous offensive piece of late. Has found a way to barrel some balls. Has been, in the mix. Has thrown a couple guys out. Like it feels like they're getting Alejandro Kirk back finally after that thumb injury really derailed basically the first, call it 3-4 months of the season.
Oh yeah, Alejandro Kirk is back. Like there's no doubt about that. Like I remember I think it was Friday night, John Schneider gave the quote about how Kirky needed about 100 plate appearances just to get back into rhythm, and we're pretty much around that point. So yeah, like he has been by far the Blue Jays' best hitter over the last few weeks. Like the hard hit balls to the opposite field are back, and that's typically a telling sign of where Kirk is at the plate. So it's been great to have his bat heating up at this point without Vladdy, and even with Vladdy in there, like just having another guy in the middle of the order producing takes a lot of weight off the shoulders of Vlad, because we all know how much he puts a lot of that pressure on himself to be the guy who carries this offense. And so that's just, it has to be reassuring for Vlad, for Springer, to see that there's another guy there who's able to carry the ship too. And, Alejandro Kirk's not the biggest power guy, so the Blue Jays obviously need more from the middle of their order too, to really, ease that burden on the pitching staff to be relatively error free. But this offense is completely different when Alejandro Kirk is hitting the way he is right now. And hopefully that continues the rest of the way. Hopefully this is the start of getting back to where he was a season ago when he had a career year, both offensively and defensively, because we know how much he brings behind the plate. But when he can contribute like he is offensively too, he's one of the best two-way catchers in baseball.
Yeah, he's been fantastic, and obviously when you're getting intentionally walked twice in one game, it's kind of a good sign of where you're at for sure. Thomas, you mentioned earlier your piece where you spoke with Brett Bateman over at Blue Jays Nation that I highly suggest anybody goes ahead and gives a read of any time that they've got some free time. But I kind of wanted to dive in a little bit more on Bateman in particular, just because of how much of a spark that he has seemingly given, and kind of your conversation with him, and kind of what your biggest takeaways were from that, and maybe kind of what you see his role and impact being the rest of the way this year, and maybe even to 2027.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the little plug there, Zach. Yeah, no, it's really fascinating how the narrative around Bateman has shifted so quickly in the
Yeah.
time that he's been with the Blue Jays. Like you think back to the return that the Jays got for Kevin Gausman, and everyone's initial reaction was like, "Oh, that's what you got for a guy who's meant so much to this organization." But to Bateman's credit, he has come up here and has been a lightning bolt for the Blue Jays. Like I asked him specifically what it's felt like to for him and McAdoo to essentially be like a shot in the arm for this Blue Jays team. And he said that how excited he was to just be up here and being in a playoff race. Like that's been so exciting for him, to have this opportunity coming over from the Cubs system. And I would say like the biggest thing that people don't necessarily know about him yet is just how mature he is. Like he's 23 years old, but this is a dude that's, could pass maturity wise as a late 20s guy. He's so calm and disciplined, and you see that a lot in the takes that he has at the plate too, like his knowledge of the strike zone. He's somebody that like, honestly, like Stephen Kwan's a pretty good comparison for him. Like, I don't know if he'll ever hit for as much power as like peak Stephen Kwan did, but I think for him to come up and impact the way he has, and like he's been thrown to the dogs, like he said, like he's come up here and he's batted leadoff, hitting second, like playing center field. Like, there's no hiding him from anyone. Like, and he has beautifully handled everything that's been thrown at him. Like the fact that he has hits off Zach Wheeler, Jesus Luzardo, Sonny Gray, Garrett Cole, Cam Slitler, like the guy is just, he's so ready for this, like offensively. His approach of being a contact high on base guy has been exactly what the Blue Jays need at the top of the order. Like, yeah, they need power, obviously, but I think recently the Blue Jays have talked about how they've kind of shifted away from being um, so reliant on messaging, like the message to their hitters for the first like 4 or 5 months of the season were, okay, we got to do damage, we got to hit for damage. If you're going to swing, you got to swing with intent. And they've kind of shifted recently to being okay, like that wasn't working. So let's be more of a contact oriented team. And that's exactly the profile that Bateman provides. So he's come up kind of like at the perfect time for the Blue Jays, where their main focus isn't about hitting for power, hitting for extra bases. It's just been getting on base any way you can. And whether it's been hitting for singles, getting walks, bunting, Bateman's been doing it all for the Blue Jays. And I think when you look at what his role could be in 2027, like center field is wide open for the Blue Jays. Like that's a big reason why I think Bateman was the perfect type of guy to acquire at the trade deadline, because that was a massive need organizationally for the Blue Jays, both at the major league level with trading Dalton Varsho, but also like internally. Like as much as Johanjik Pinongo and RJ Schreck are having impressive years at AAA and are very talented prospects, those guys are corner outfielders. They're not center fielders. And you didn't really want to go into a 2027 outfield picture where Jonathan Clase is like your starting center fielder, and like maybe Miles Straw is your platoon guy with Clase. Like that's not a recipe for success. And the free agent market isn't all that lucrative or lucrative in terms of the amount of center field options there are. Like Dalton Varsho is probably going to be the top center fielder available, which says a lot about how thin that market is. So to be able to have Bateman and all the years of club control that you have with him, like that, at least from a depth perspective, even if he becomes a fourth outfielder on a really good team, that's value. There's a lot of value to that. And I think having a speed guy like him on this roster is something that has been missing too. So I think there's a lot of boxes that Bateman is already checking, both in terms of what he brings to this team now, but what he can bring in 2027 and beyond too.
Yeah, he's been incredible to watch, and definitely you can kind of see the vibe that he's brought and the shift. And as you mentioned, the maturity. Obviously, he's got the whole coach's son thing going on. So really been enjoyable to watch him. But Thomas,
Yeah.
what also has been enjoyable was this having you on here today. We really appreciate you taking the time to do this and all your insight on the Blue Jays and everything around the team here.
Of course, always happy to jump on with you guys. I know, you guys have had a great year podcast wise, so just happy to be able to contribute to that.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate that. That is Thomas Hall of Blue Jays Nation and the Blue Jays World Update podcast. You can follow all of his work there, and you can follow him on Twitter or X at Hall_Thomas_. That is going to do it for us here today at the Bird's Eye View podcast. Make sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening along on the audio provider of your choice, make sure to drop a follow and review. You can follow the rest of us on Twitter. I am at Worden_Zach. Jori is at J Negin-Shecter, and the pod is at BEV_pod. Thanks so much for listening.